Welcome back to Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network, sponsored by Bet Online. I am Patrick Chiotti. I am one of the hosts of this program. Bree Macis won't be joining me for this show. She's feeling a little under the weather. We've had a busy holiday week, which is why we're not getting a full Bleav in the Broncos episode for this run. But this is going to be just a very special, quick game preview as the Broncos and the Bengals are about to kick off here in just a couple of hours. I hope every single one of you had an amazing holiday season, whatever you are celebrating. And it was a great time for me and my family getting to spend that time with my little one. But there's Broncos football afoot, and the playoffs are nearing closer and closer. 2 games left, one of them being today against the red-hot Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins-led Cincinnati Bengals. This team, not very good defensively, but one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league right now. Baltimore being another one of those teams in that AFC North. But Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals, absolutely red-hot right now. Broncos coming off a tough loss against the Los Angeles Chargers. That was a tough one to watch. If you listen to the post game on Bleacher Report with Chris Harris Jr. and I, you heard some of the frustrations. You heard some of the things that Chris had to say about the Broncos' performance. But essentially, this is a must-win. These next 2 games are must-win games for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton, Bo Nix, they've got some things to figure out with this pass game. We'll talk about it a little bit here, But before we get into all that, we've got a message from our sponsors, Bet Online. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC, everything in between. Head to Bet Online today, and don't forget to use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And where we're going to start is just with this Cincinnati game. This is a big game. If they win, they go to the playoffs. Obviously, we all know, that whole situation, it's tense is the word that I would use, because it seems like we're always having to play the Cincinnati Bengals in these late season games for a playoff spot. I remember specifically the Super Bowl year, Super Bowl 50 in 2015. The Denver Broncos were playing the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. I was at that game. It was negative 10 degrees with the wind chill at one point, and I was still sweating. So if that tells you anything about these matchups, this is going to be one where I'm probably going to be sweating as well. The Bengals offense is absolutely red hot right now. They're playing great football. Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow seem to be just, continuing their LSU days and, obviously their careers here in the NFL, but that synergy just, I feel like, has never been better. Burrow understands what Chase is going to do pre-snap. Chase understands what Burrow is going to do post-snap. So they just have a really good relationship right now. And their run game is starting to pick up. Chase Brown has been a really reliable back for them as of late. But this offense is still one where, you can get to them if need be. And the Broncos defense, especially after that last game, they only sacked Herbert twice, and one of them, was a gimme, but they didn't get any pressure on Justin Herbert. And it was kind of the same thing from the first Chargers game where they were just stalwarting them. So this offensive line, while it does have, its weaknesses, they're still overall a decent enough unit for Joe Burrow to operate. Joe Burrow's been hit quite a bit this year, so kind of gives me some hope if we can get some push in the interior, but that's going to be one of the big keys. And for this game preview episode, we're really just going to talk about, the offensive and defensive keys. I can bust out all the stats. I've got all the metrics right here. But realistically, here's the picture. Over the last 6 games, this Bengals team has been averaging over 31 points a game, over 300 passing yards a game, and around 91 rushing yards a game. Whereas the defense has been allowing nearly 28 points a game, around 260 passing yards a game, and over 125 rushing yards a game. So defense still not the strongest point for the Cincinnati Bengals. They've had quite a few injuries as well. Sam Hubbard getting injured. Sheldon Rankins was a DNP in practice this week. And there's some other players that we're dealing with some injuries. We know T. Higgins is going to be active for this game. So it's going to be interesting to see how injuries will play a factor into this. Speaking from the Broncos side as well, cornerback Riley Moss will be playing in this game. Jaleel McLaughlin was limited in practice this week. Still need to see if he is going to be active. I know Blake Watson is still on the 53-man roster, so I'm sure we'll see quite a bit of Blake Watson as we did in the LA game. But for the Broncos coming off of this loss against the Chargers, you're up 21-10. You end up losing that game in just a horrible fashion. I said on the last show with Bleav, if this was going to be the game where the Chargers rushing offense decided to wake up, it's going to be a bad time for the Broncos. And it did wake up in a certain type of way. So the Bengals run game as of late has been waking up a little bit, but the Broncos offense has to get going in this game. They cannot get behind the sticks as they did in the second half of the Chargers game. You just can't do it. You have to keep Joe Burrow off of the field. So let's talk about what this offense needs to do against the Cincinnati Bengals. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my screen. If not, I'm so sorry. But here we go. First key is establish the run for real this time. You have to establish the run when we're talking about playoff football. And this is essentially a playoff game for the Denver Broncos. They started early last game against the Chargers. They were running, you heard us talk about it, run more gap with Audric Estime in the backfield. And they did. And it was working really well. And then they went away from it. For what reason, I do not know. But establish the run for real this time. This team is allowing over 125 rushing yards a game over their last 6 games. This is the game where you have to just stick with the run game. Don't get cute. Don't try to go away from it. Okay, we ran power, we ran all our gap stuff in the first quarter. All right, let's just go away from it. No. Hammer it down, keep it going. Audric Estime was doing really well, and you have as a coach and an offensive play caller, you have to keep feeding the hot hand. That's what my assistant coaches would tell me all the time. Don't stop running. Don't stop running just because we've gotten 3 first downs. Don't stop. Keep going. That is what is going to make a defense tired at the end of the day, and that's what we want to do. We want to keep Joe Burrow off the field and keep this defense fresh. So establish the run for real this time. Don't just write it on your play sheet, Sean. Run the damn ball. The second offensive key against this Bengals team, utilize screens, but to the tight end. The Broncos have been one of those teams where, Sean Payton has a ton of screens in his playbook, and he has done a really good job over his career establishing the screen game. But as of late, I feel like they've been sniffed out quite a bit. Teams know they're going to run a screen to the running back. You can just see it on the tape. Javonte Williams is getting hardly anything off these screens. They're figuring out how to mess up the blocking releases of these offensive linemen and put pressure on Bo in the screen game. So change up your screen game. Run more screens to the tight end. When Cincinnati played Cleveland got a bunch of chunk yards on screens to David Njoku. That's the type of game plan that you need to go into this with. Run some 2 tight end sets with Troutman and Kroll, and get Kroll the ball in the screen game. I think that would be a good way for them to get chunk yardage and build the run game off of. The Cincinnati pass rush is aggressive. They're really aggressive, but you can utilize that to your advantage. They like to play quite a bit of man, not a ton of zone. So it's beneficial if you can get them on blitzing downs and get the screens to the tight ends, not to the running backs. I feel like they'll get some good chunk yardage off of that. And they also need to get to more middle of the field and man beater concepts. This has been one of my gripes with Sean Payton over the course of this season is there's just not enough concepts where Bo is getting a route in front of his face, right? A face crossing route, whether it's, mesh or drive, or, he loves to call dagger, which is fine, but that's such a deep crossing concept that it takes so much time. Get the ball out quickly and let's get some crossers. Let's run some rub routes. Let's run some pick plays. You can still run mesh, in a certain way and have it essentially be a screen. But you need to put more receivers in front of Bo's face, because I feel like a lot of his concepts, especially when I went back and I watched the Chargers game, it felt like Sean just was not adjusting to what the Chargers were giving him. They were playing a ton of just deep zone and putting 6-7 in the box, right? And they were just playing over the top. And Sean is just calling like vertical stem routes. And it's like, dude, you've got to break it off at some point. You've got to work underneath. Like I said, this team likes to play quite a bit of man. I saw Cleveland run stick quite a bit. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is, it's usually out of a three-man set. You've got your outside guy is just running a clear out. So he's just clearing out the flat. And then you've got either an out or an arrow route or flat route, whatever, your preferred terminology is for you Madden heads out there, an arrow or a flat route. And then your main receiver, your main read is the stick. So the stick is, 5 yards. And if they're playing outside, you just sit down. If they're playing man, you continue to go out. So it creates this spacing, and it's all timing based, but Cleveland ran it a few times and they did a good job with DTR. It's a simple concept, but it works, right? So get to more of those middle of the field, put some receivers in front of Bo's face, get him crossing so that he can see it. Every time they run a deep crosser, right, to Courtland Sutton, Bo Nix is looking for that ball. He wants that throw. So give him more of those opportunities. And then adjust to what the Bengals are giving you. You've got to be able to adjust your play calling. You can't just keep running 4 verticals when they're playing 4 deep, right? We can't do that. That's asinine. So more man beater concepts, run a little more runs. They've been running smash quite a bit. They've been running flood a little bit, which I think are all fine concepts. But you've got to be able to do that. The other thing I would say in regards to the run game, get back to more quarterback design runs. Cleveland did it a couple times, and I like some of the concepts that they were running with DTR, who's an athletic quarterback. But Bo Nix has that athleticism. That you can run design runs with him. They were running like buck sweep read with DTR, but it worked. So get to some of those, and I think you'll see the offense perform a little bit better if they can do that. Defensive keys against the Bengals, and then we will be getting out of here. So first off, you've got to get to Joe Burrow early and often. You've got to push the pocket. Do not let him move in the pocket. He is, he's Harry Houdini, right? He can move within that pocket, and he can even get out. I feel like he's been stepping up a little bit more and using his legs when he needs to. So we've got to watch out for that. Herbert was able to do it a couple of times in the Chargers game. So you've got to be able to keep Joe Burrow in the pocket, but you've got to get to him. I know, this team is hungry after only getting to Herbert really once in that last game. So they need to get back to it. This is the team with the most sacks in the NFL and, the most pressures in the NFL. Show me now. Like, I don't care about the first half of the season numbers. Show me now. Show me that you can maintain, because over the last 6 games, the Broncos defense has been allowing 270 passing yards a game, 86.5 rushing yards, and 20 points a game. This is not the elite defense that everybody thought it was. The first half of the year, early second half of the year. They've been exposed a couple times. Is that because Riley Moss is back? Well, let's get to key number 2. Get back to mostly man coverages. We heard after the last game that, they were playing a more zone because Riley Moss wasn't in the game, but Chris Abrams-Drain can run man. He can run man coverage. It's fine. He was great in zone coverage, and that's awesome that you have a guy like that. But this is not the game where you want to be playing zone. This is the game where you're going to want to be locking up these receivers and playing solid defense in the front 7. You've got to be able to contain that passing game and make Joe Burrow hold on to the ball for as long as possible. So play more man coverage. Disguise your zone at time. You don't want to play only man, because then, they're just going to start calling man beater. So disguise it where you can, but, get back to mostly man coverage. Last key for the defense against this Bengals team, just stick PS2 on Chase and leave it. There's no reason to try and get cute. There's no reason to have him, stick to only one side of the field, and because they're going to try and move Chase around. And it's fine if you want to switch some stuff off every now and then. But I feel for the most part, you just need to stick pat on Chase and leave it. And plus, this is a guy who we're talking about as a defensive player of the year. What an opportunity it would be for Pat to, stick on Chase and just shut him down like that. I feel like that would solidify his defensive player of the year prowess if he's able to stop arguably the most electric wide receiver in football right now and just bring it to a screeching halt. Say no mas. Like, we're done with this. I'm the defensive player of the year. I'm locking you up. And you also have the added Alabama LSU beef, but that is what it is. Broncos, Bengals, vying for a playoff spot. What do I think is going to happen in this game? Final prediction. Well, this Cincinnati offense is hot. And they're also hungry for a playoff spot. So you have to take that into consideration. Broncos offense has been struggling in the second halves of games. It's not, it says they're a top 10 scoring offense, but a lot of those points are beefed up by the defense in certain situations, specifically from, you've had 3 pick sixes in the last 3 games. So I feel like that kind of helps add to the points, going off of offensive EPA and defensive EPA and all these other metrics. My heart says that the Broncos clinch today. But I just, Joe Burrow is too hot. I feel like this is going to be a game where if the Broncos defense does not come to play, Joe Burrow could possibly drop 400. We saw Jameis Winston do it. It's not that crazy. And this dude is playing at a crazy high level. 31-21 is going to be my prediction. Bengals defeat the Broncos. Going into the Chiefs game, final game of the year, can the Broncos clinch a playoff spot? I don't know. But we hope that you're here with us. See me after the game on Bleacher Report with Chris Harris Jr. See Bree Maestas and I next week on another episode of Bleav in the Broncos. Thank you so much for joining me for this game preview episode, and we will be seeing you after the game. Go Broncos.